He's actually reliable. So grab your tic-tac-toe boards and let's get on the fast track. Well, I think for many of us, you're reading through the Old Testament, you get to the Tower of Babel, and you think to yourself, what is wrong with those people? Why won't they obey God? Why won't they spread out? Why are they building this monument? And some self-righteousness begins to get into your heart, at least it does mine. I think, I wouldn't be like those people. I would obey God. I would do the right thing. Really? There's something wrong in my heart, and maybe in yours as well. The Tower of Babel is a classic example of what happens when you and I come face to face with the unknown. Uncertainty, with fear, with anxiety. What do? Every time, imagine this ball here is your heart. Every time you come to a crossroads and facing the unknown, you have a choice. Will you fill your mind with problems, or will you fill your mind with God's promises? You know, as a family, we've had a lot of different challenges. I have 2 teenagers, I have a 7-year-old with autism, and been married for 22 years. And in that process, our mind has been filled with an awful lot of problems that we've had to figure out how to trust God facing the unknown. This is my daughter, Sierra. Sierra, we have certainly been through a lot of different uncertainties in our life the last couple of years, haven't we?
We have. One of mine was especially when I picked up and moved to school.
Oh, yeah.
Moving 9.5 hours away, not even knowing a single person.
Yeah, so that's a problem. So let's put another problem into the heart. And what does it feel like? Because I know for you, growing up, really wanting to have the kind of friends that you always longed for, you didn't always have that. And school was a chance to, like, am I going to have those friends? And how did that feel going into that circumstance?
Well, it was definitely very nerve-wracking, trying to figure out, am I going to make any friends? Am I going to be able to find people to hang out with? What am I going to do for lunch? Am I going to eat with people? Am I going to sit by myself?
Sure, and that's a big move, 9 hours across the country. I'll tell you one of mine, it's weird. I have a couple relatives who started losing their hair several years ago, and I remember saying to them, hey, what's the big deal? I mean, you have your hair, you don't have your hair. And then suddenly I'm 44 and I start losing my own hair, and I'm like, wait a second, this feels a little different when it's happening to you, doesn't it? It's amazing how the unknown, it's not just losing your hair, how you're looking differently, you know, hair growing out of the wrong places, but it's the whole idea that you're getting older, and certainly medical things. Oh my goodness, medicine can be a huge issue that brings the unknown into our life.
That has definitely been a big one in our lives, especially when I had my surgery last year.
Oh, yeah.
And I wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to eat normally again after having my gallbladder out.
Sure, put that in. A couple years earlier than that, we'd had that issue where you'd been hit by a car, and then it took us a couple years before we found it was going on. All kinds of medical issues were going on, and just problems kept filling our lives in that time.
They did.
Yeah.
And then, again, when I found out I was dyslexic, it was huge for me because I had been struggling for all those years and I had no idea why. And finally I found out, and it was, how is this going to affect my life? And is it going to change? Am I going to be able to go to college? Am I going to be able to pass?
Sure, and you're 18 when we found out about it, so we didn't have like an IEP or something. So all of a sudden we got the uncertainty, is this college going to accommodate for you? And one of the things we do as a family is we like to laugh. And so humor is a way in which we deal with a lot of the problems. So I say the joke about the dyslexic is, did you hear about the dyslexic atheist? You know,
I have not.
He's not sure if there's such a thing as dog, you know. So as you were wrestling with dyslexia and college and friends, but I tell you, for me, it's been amazing just career-wise, you know, challenges of career, what does this mean for the future? And all those unknowns begin to come in. And in the process of that, we had a big one 7 years ago.
We did. We adopted this little boy, and I remember when I showed up to the hospital that morning at 7 in the morning, I was holding my baby brother after he had been taken out of the little aquarium they put him in. And I didn't know my heart could be so full of love and so full of happiness. But not much longer, and we found out that he was blind, and his eyes shook back and forth, and that there's no cure for that.
Yeah, in fact, you know, Beth and I decided to adopt after, you know, you guys were 8 or 9, 10, and we waited 2 years for adoption. We're wondering, well, is anything really going to happen here? Are we going to be able to adopt? And so that was painful, just in that whole process of, God, we're ready. We're prepared. Are you going to do that? And then once Quinn was born, you know, suddenly he's bashing his head into concrete those first couple of years, and you're trying to stop him. And oh my goodness, God, what should we do? And talk about our mind being filled with problems.
Yeah, and when he's bashing his head, it's because he can't talk to us. He won't talk to us.
Won't communicate. And
just all we want is for him to tell us, what do you want? What can we do for you?
It was the uncertainty of adoption. It was the uncertainty of autism. It was the uncertainty of blindness. And that caused a lot of stress, because when you have a special needs child, one of the challenges is that it doesn't just affect the child, it affects your marriage, it affects your whole family. And so we had a lot of family meetings. You were under stress. Mom was in depression. I was heading toward depression. What do you remember about those family meetings we had?
I don't remember a whole lot, but I do remember that those were the times when I felt that I was being neglected, because both of my brothers were in constant need of supervision.
Yeah, my other son has ADHD. And
so I just felt like I was the only normal one, and I didn't get the attention that I necessarily wanted.
Yeah, I remember a couple family meetings where I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm neglecting you, and I'm just trying to keep everything afloat, and you know, my mind's full of problems. How do I be the dad I want to be? How do I be the father I want to be? How do I be the follower of Christ?
Right.
But of course, in the middle of all those challenges, what I'd always say to the family was this: all right, guys, what are we going to do? All these problems coming our way, we
panic first.
Panic first. Panic first. Isn't that the instinct of the human heart? I would always jokingly say we panic first, because isn't that what we all do? Our instinct is not to pray. Our instinct is not to cry out to God. Our instinct is not to begin to study the Word. Our instinct is always what? Panic first, right? That's what we do. And what happens is, when your heart is filled with all these different problems and all these anxieties, what happens in the middle of the panic is this: you all of a sudden begin to rehearse that over and over again. You begin to nurse those things over and over again.
And that's all you focus on, is all of those thoughts that are just taking over your mind.
Yeah, it's like what I call the snowball effect, which is when you take a snowball and you roll it and you roll it and roll it, it gets bigger and bigger. And the same thing happens in your mind. When you have these problems and you begin to panic first, your heart goes crazy. So let me show you what a heart looks like when you take these problems and you all of a sudden begin to panic. Here's what it looks like. Ready? Yeah, there it is. And those problems that were bad to begin with are suddenly all over the place, right? And this right here, this is what the Bible calls a double-minded heart. A double-minded heart is a heart that, instead of meditating on the mind of Christ, instead of meditating on God's promises, you're taking a bad circumstance and it's even becoming worse. Why? Because now you have, in the midst of all the problems, you have all the anxiety of how you're handling it. This is why the Bible speaks so practically about soul talk, talking to your heart about the promises of God. In Corinthians, it describes how we need to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. In Romans, it says that we need to be transformed, our mind, our joy, we be transformed by the renewing of our mind. So how do we do that? Well, we begin to place into our mind certain promises of God. And I'd say, whether it's scripture memory or just having a few key verses for things you struggle with, think of the promises of God as similar balls that go into your mind, or thoughts that go into your mind that bring peace into your mind in the midst of it. So I'll give you one of mine. One of the ones that I have memorized over the years is from Joshua chapter 1. When we've come face to face with medical issues,
We have.
we've come face to face with autism, anxiety, depression, I come face to face with Joshua 1. And there's several verses in there. One is, God says, "Be strong and courageous, for I am with you."
I remember you using that one a lot of times before Javen and I went into surgery.
Oh, yeah. When you guys went into surgery, I got out sock buckets, and I'm like, imagine this is your fears. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. Nothing's going to happen. And I said, what are we going to say to that voice? What are we going to say? Remember?
Be strong and courageous.
That's right. Be strong and courageous. And what was one of yours, even as you were in high school, that you were sort of meditating on, that you said, I got to work with this in the midst of my challenges?
The one that I focused most on was Matthew 6:34. And Matthew 6:34 says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has its own worries, but instead worry about today and think about today and meditate on the things that God's doing in your life.
Yeah, well, let's put that one in your heart. That's one for me too, because I have a tendency to be a planner. As a planner, I'm always thinking about the future. I'm thinking about, how do I get from here to there? And God has told me, in the midst of autism, when your son's in the 1 percentile when it comes to speech, if you start thinking about 2 days, 3 years, a month in advance, it can be very, very depressing.
It can.
Very discouraging. But if you say, boy, small victories, I want to celebrate small victories. Tell you another one from Joshua chapter 1 for me is, God says, meditate on my word day and night. Do not turn to the left or to the right, but instead meditate, and I will be with you. It's one of my big ones. Do you have another one?
Yes, I do. Let's see. Oh, 1 Peter 4:12 has been a huge one this year for me. And it says, "Beloved, do not be surprised when the fiery trials of this life come upon you." Because every time something bad happens, I can't believe that it's happening, and it's so surprising.
Yeah, all through high school, we'd have that conversation. Sierra would have some bad thing happen, or a friend was a jerk, whatever, and I'd say, honey, the situation's bad, but the bigger thing is that you're always surprised when bad things happen. God tells us this world is not Disneyland, it's a battle zone, so do not be surprised. So you decided to memorize that. It meant a lot to me. Joshua also goes on, he says, I am with you, I will not leave you, and I will not forsake you. And that's one of the reoccurring promises of God. No matter what's going on in your life, God promises that he will not leave you in the midst of your difficulty. Any more?
Yeah, I have one more. I really like Philippians 4:6 because it talks about when do not be anxious about anything, but instead focus on the thoughts that are pure and holy and bring joy to your life and the great things that God has done for you.
Yeah, and that word meditate's very similar. What are you thinking about? What are you rehearsing? What are you focusing on?
Bouncing around in your brain?
Head? Yeah. And so for me, all through my life, especially as a planner, because I can tendency to fool myself into thinking that I'm in control of my life or I'm in control of my destiny, I pop a few more in there. One of mine is from the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs says, "The horse is made ready for battle, but victory is the Lord's." It's a reminder to me that, yes, in the same way, I do want to make sure that I'm focusing on God, but I also know that though I'm going to do my planning, it's ultimately up to him. So this is what a heart looks like when instead of allowing the panic to go on, the promises of God bounce around in your heart as well. In the same way, those promises of God give us peace, they give us joy in the midst of difficulty.